Hi friends, welcome to Artrageous. It's Lori here. We're so happy that you decided to join us today for our drawing class, Turning Isolation into Inspiration. Welcome! It's going to be so much fun. And guess what we're learning today? Perspective. How thought-provoking. Lovely, everyone. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to Sophia. She did your last drawing class, and she's going to teach you about perspective.
Thank you, Lori. Hello, everybody. We are back for our drawing lesson of the week. And I wanted to talk about perspective this week because it's a really excellent tool to have in your basic how to draw toolbox. And it's going to add a lot of depth to your pictures. So we want to take, rather than a flat 2D drawing, and make it look three-dimensional. So if you are at home and you want to follow along, all you need is a pencil, paper. We love erasers because we're all going to make mistakes. And of course, the handy dandy ruler or any straight edge that you have in your house. So what we're going to do is draw a simple one-point perspective drawing. And how we're going to start that is like this. So we've got our page. Now, some basic things about perspective drawing is you're always going to have this horizontal line. It can be in the middle of the page, higher up, lower down, but what this represents is basically your eye level. Like, what's the furthest you can see? So if this is your eye level, anything above the horizon line is something that you're actually looking up at, and anything below the horizon line, you're going to be looking down at. Now, what you see here is a dot, and the fancy technical word for that is the vanishing point. And this is basically where everything is going to disappear to that point and move towards it. Now, for one-point perspective, it's really simple because you've got 1 point. Later on, I'll introduce also what 2-point perspective and 3-point perspective are going to be in just a quick little introduction. But for basics, we are going to draw one of my favorite scenes, which is a pier going into the water. So I've actually gone ahead and done an example for you, which looks like this. So this is kind of what we are working towards, and your drawing doesn't need to look exactly like this, but just to kind of give you an outline of where we're going with this. Okay, so for this drawing, I started it exactly like this. Take your ruler, draw the horizon line wherever you want. For this one, I put it about 2/3 up the page, which is a nice place to draw your horizon line for a composition that is this simple. So 2/3 up the page, drawing that line. And that's what you see here, where it's dividing the mountains from the lake. And then the vanishing point would be right here in the middle. And we're going to draw all of this pier going towards that vanishing point. So how we started is just take your ruler, draw these two angles. And it doesn't have to be exactly that. It can be wider, it can be more narrow, but this is going to be your pier. And then once you've got that down on your page, we want to kind of split the difference here and draw 2 more lines, not going all the way to the edge, but just coming up about straight up from the other 2 lines. And this is going to be the top of your posts. So that represents this angle right here. And of course, it's opposite. Okay, so I trust that you all have your lines ready. So to draw the mountains next, this is our background. And something about perspective that's really fun, and I encourage you to look out your window next time you're going for a walk outside, is to look far off in the distance. And the way our eyes actually work is that what's closer to us has more detail, and what's further away has less detail. And some of you might be going, oh yeah, that's true, but maybe you've thought of it, maybe you haven't. So for the mountain in the front, because it's closer to us, it's going to have more detail. So for that, I'm drawing this squiggly little tree line just as a nice outline. And the reason I'm drawing the squiggly trees is because it's so close that we can kind of see them, and we're going to clean this up as we go. Now the mountain, one step back, you can still kind of see the trees, but they're not going to be as prominent. So there's some squiggles, there's some dips, but overall it's getting smoother. Now we're going to go back one more layer and create a really nice smooth mountain. And even without shading anything, that tells us that these mountains are going further back in space. Now, I love the mountains. They're one of my favorite things. Here in New Mexico, we have excellent mountains, so I made these quite large in the image. If you are an ocean person and you totally love the ocean, you could leave the horizon line flat. You can just draw a big sun, draw some clouds. You can put some clouds up here. And again, these don't need to be big fluffy clouds. They can be lightly scribbled in. They could be shaded in, whatever you want to make your clouds look like. It's actually raining here at the minute, which in the desert is a total blessing. So I'll be inspired to draw some bigger clouds in honor of the rain that we're having. Okay, so we've got some clouds, we've got some mountains. Now, the other thing about perspective is not only do we have more detail in this front mountain, but it's actually going to appear a lot darker. So I'm going to shade this in with a darker pencil. If you're at home using just a standard pencil, it's about an HB pencil. So you can just push from the side, shading it in. And for an HB, you'll have to push pretty hard to get a good dark value, but I'm using a 6B right now, which is just one of my favorite pencils because you can go really dark with it without as much pressure as you might have to use in that HB. And then, okay, so that's a good starting point. And then for further back, I'm gonna do exactly the same thing, but not push as hard. And this is going to create the perspective that it is further away. And we're gonna come back in and refine all of this. And then for the mountain that is furthest away, it's going to appear even lighter with even less detail. So I'm just gonna give it a quick shade all over, and then we're gonna come back in. You see we've lost a lot of our edges, so I'm gonna come back in here and define some of those trees. And in my mind, I'm imagining mountains with big, beautiful evergreen trees, some pine trees, some cedar trees. So they're kind of tall, pointy, and we're just gonna go in there and do that. Okay, so already it's taking form and feels closer than the other mountains. And for super fun, easy trick, you can come in and kind of shade like a little area and give the mountains some variety because they have valleys, it's got hills. It's not all uniform, of course. Okay, good enough. And then in here, I'm gonna come back, just define a few of those areas. So another visual trick for your eye is, of course, this part of the mountain that's close to the horizon line. Because mountains are sloping towards you, this area is going to be closer than the crest of the mountain. So you can add a little bit more detail lower down on the mountain and gradually fade to slightly less detail at the top. And that's going to give you an even more realistic look. Okay, next tip for the mountains in perspective is that because this mountain's a bit more forward, I'm going to bring it down just a little bit from the horizon as if it's coming towards us into the lake, just like that. And we're going to come back in and maybe even add a beach, because who doesn't want to be at a beach? Okay, now for the pier, I'm going to leave that for now. I'm going to switch to a lighter pencil just to start the outlines. If you do have a pencil drawing set at home, you can use an HB or even some of your H pencils for this, just to lay in the basic shapes. And for this, we're going to start, and I'll use my ruler, is we're going to start just drawing some really light, straight across lines to represent the wood planks of the pier. Now, if you've never drawn anything like this before, a tip is as I'm going back in space towards this vanishing point, I'm actually going to make my lines closer and closer together. And I'll show you what that looks like in just a sec. And we're also not going to go back all the way to the edge, so I'm going to stop my pier there. So what I meant by that is that this plank of wood is narrower on the page than this plank of wood because it's further away. So I'll show you on here. This is the first plank of wood, going back to these much skinnier planks of wood here, and that's going to create that sense of depth. So now we're going to draw some poles, and yours can look however you want. Some will have taller ones, some will have shorter ones. But what we want to do is draw a perfectly vertical line using the ruler up to this other vanishing point or perspective line that you've drawn. And again, they're getting closer and closer together the further you go on the pier. Okay, so we've got those. And then you can use the line across to match them up the same on both sides. And one more. And there we go. So now, talked about the eraser, the best tool of all. I'm just going to go in and erase my lines that I started with as guide points. So when you're using guidelines, you do want to draw them fairly lightly just so that they're easier to erase down the road. Okay, and now, kind of erase that by accident. Now on the top of the pier, just going to draw some ovals to represent that these are in fact round poles. And if you want to learn about drawing different shapes, you can of course watch last week's drawing lesson with drawing and shading three-dimensional forms. Okay, so now all of you at home have a beautiful pier floating in an imaginary lake with some mountains going in perspective. So some other tips for this drawing is we're going to add some texture, and we all know that wood is not, especially wood in piers, is not perfectly cut at 90-degree angles, so we're gonna add some variety to this and kind of just shade in these ones up front with some squiggles, some not so perfect straight lines on the edge because maybe it's been worn down with time. And the same thing that we did for the mountains, making the ones in the front darker, going to lighter, we're gonna do down here as well. So these front planks of wood are going to have more shadows and more contrast than the ones at the end of the pier because they're further away from us. So to do that, we're going to add some very fun wood texture. So if you have not studied a piece of wood and all of the incredible lines that form in it, I highly suggest drawing wood one day or bark. You might have been able to tell already, but I might love nature, so you know, drawing wood and trees and bark to me is an exciting activity. Okay, I realize it's not the case for everybody. So we're drawing some texture in there, and I'm just having fun with this. Doesn't have to be perfect. You can have some lines that are darker, some that are lighter, but we basically just want to describe that it's not a perfectly slick, polished pier and give it more of a natural look. Okay, and as I'm getting back I'm going to use a lighter pencil and draw less pronounced details, because if you go look outside or look in your house, look at your kitchen flooring, whatever you might have available to see, is that further away you see less details, and up here you might see, you know, the cracks in the wood and the knots that were there and all that good stuff. Okay, and then I'm going to come back again and darken those dividing lines from the planks of wood just by going over them. And add some shading over top, give it some more texture. And we have your wooden pier. Okay, how am I doing on time, Chris? Oh, wow, I'm ahead of schedule. This is amazing. Okay, so now for the poles here. We want to look at shading cylinders because that's basically what we're doing. And I'm going to put a sun right here. It could be sunrise, sunset. But the reason I want to put that there is just to tell you where your light source is. So the light is all coming this way. So that means this is going to be the darkest part of your cylinder or pole because it is the furthest away from your light source, and it's going to get lighter near the edges of the post. And that's going to give you that nice sense of three-dimensionality to your drawing. And I'm just going to put some basic shading there. Just for the sake of demonstration, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this. And I'm coming back in and I'm kind of making little lines in the same direction as this cylinder that's on top. So if it comes underneath like this, I'm shading underneath in the same fashion. And the way to shade drawings, that would be called contour shading. You can do cross contour shading, hatching, cross hatching for those art enthusiasts out there that want to look up other techniques. Okay, excellent. We have posts and a pier. So now for the water. The water takes quite a long time to shade, so I'm not going to do it all here, but I'll just show you that we've made it darker underneath this mountain because we are assuming that the mountain is reflecting into the water and it's going to be a bit darker. And then just shading all over. And once you've done that, I'll show you how. So I'm just going to shade up here. I'm going to add some in here. And I'm pushing quite hard because, again, it's reflecting this darker mountain. So we're adding some shading. Now what I love about shading water is that it can be choppy and it looks fine. You don't have to get that perfectly smooth blending effect. So you get a bit more freedom when you're shading water because, hey, it just looks like ripples. Okay, and I'm gonna come in here and I'm not going to finish this shading, but I just want to give you a few more tips before we're done with this and show you some other great tools for drawing with pencil. Okay, and I'm going to make this even darker. Let me grab a darker pencil. And if you go over your poles, doesn't matter, you can erase. Do love drawing. Okay, so here we are. We've got some darker water. We're going to add some ripple effects. You can add a boat if you're feeling adventurous. You can add some birds flying. You basically get to make this your happy place and draw whatever you like. Now, I have 3 different erasers here, which I use all of them constantly. So of course we've got the classic white eraser, super handy for larger erasing areas. We've got the kneaded eraser, which is very fun. Okay, so if you've never used one of these, they're really popular for charcoal drawing. Also great for pencil because what you can do is bend it to whatever size eraser you want, and then it just works like a regular eraser. Once it gets black on that part, you just knead it back into the rest of it, make the shape you want to get, and come back in and erase some more. But my favorite of all is the eraser pen. So it works just like a lead pencil. You have a lead that is a white eraser and feed it in. And this is great for having a really firm eraser that has a really small edge. So what I'm doing here is I am creating a beach because I want to be on the beach. And how I'm doing that is I'm just coming in underneath this mountain and erasing a nice highlight. And now you can all come to the beach with me in my happy little drawing. And I've drawn it further out from here because we have a little peninsula beach going into the lake. And we have a beach over there. And to make it more realistic, all you have to do is really push the contrast. So that means you're making the darks even darker and the lights even lighter. And that's gonna give it more of a sense of reality. So I'm gonna come back in here, push that horizon line at the beach, kind of define the water edge a little bit. And you just go around and around the drawing, making areas darker and lighter as you go until you are satisfied with your picture. Now I drew right over some of my posts, so I'm going to come back in and erase those. And there we have it. Okay, shade some of those. And for those of you following along at home, you can make your water as choppy as you want simply by adding more lines like this. Or maybe life is choppy enough and you want some nice smooth water like over here, and you're going to keep your shading really even and relatively flat. And what happens if you have, well, in either case, what happens is whatever is above the water is reflecting down. So if you have clouds that are white and happy, peaceful clouds, you could erase some areas to suggest that there's a white cloud reflecting, or if you have dark clouds and light water, you can add more shadows. Okay, so one last tool I want to show you is these great little paper pencils. They're technically called like paper tortillons, which I have no idea why they're called that. You can get them in packs of like 6, 12, many. And all they are is paper rolled up into a tip. These ones are both very well used, so the end is black. But these are my favorite things for blending. So you can see here we've got a lot of texture just from the graphite on the page, and you're gonna have even more texture if you have a rougher surface that you're drawing on. But you can come in with these and you just push on the side of them, flat against the page, oops, and it's going to smooth that texture out. So if you are drawing, for instance, like we are, water against a wood pier, you want them to have a different texture because water is, of course, a different texture than wood. If you don't have one of these, which I suspect many of you won't, and that's fine, you can use your finger. I do suggest washing your hands before doing it because you can get a lot of oil on your hands, and if you use your finger to blend like this and you have a lot of oil, what happens is you're going to get like that. You're gonna get a really dark blob and then it's gonna smooth, and what happens with a lot of oil is this dark blob doesn't erase easily. So that's why these are really nice. It gives you a bit more control than, worrying about how much oil is on your fingers at any given point. And Keeps your hands a little bit cleaner, although inevitably I end up with pencil all over me. Okay. And there we go. So if you're watching this, it would be super fun if you wrote in the comments where you are in the world, because I know we've had people watching from all over the States, from Canada, from other countries, so post in the comments where you are. And if you have any questions or any topics you want me to talk about, answer, do a demo on, I'm happy to do that. So hopefully you are all enjoying this as much as I am. So now, Chris, you're just gonna have to tell me if there's questions. So super quick, before we go, I do want to talk about 2-point perspective and 3-point perspective for those of you who want to take this one step further, and maybe you've already done this and you want to go to the next step. So 1-point perspective is, of course, that. You've got your horizon line, one vanishing point, and everything's coming out from there. Now what this is assuming is that you are looking at a flat surface. So let's take the example of a cube. What 1-point perspective suggests, this is our 1 point, is that you are going to look at a flat surface of this cube, and everything else is going to disappear towards that single point. And what you can think about is that all of these are describing the length. So the length of the cube is going back. Okay, so now, we're in the 3-dimensional world, so to make things more realistic, we're gonna work towards 3 dimensions. So for 2 dimensions, however, here's our horizon line. We are going to draw, already messed up. So rather than looking at the front of a cube, say you're looking straight on a building on this example. Now, if you're standing on a street corner and you're looking at the building, you're going to see the corner of the building, and then you're going to see the edges of the building go back in space down the 2 streets. And how you determine those is by drawing those tops. So now you have 2-point perspective. This is a building, you have a little door here, you have some windows. Okay, anyways, I'm sure you get the idea. Now 3-point perspective gets really interesting because say you're standing on the street corner and you've got those 2 directions. Now you're gonna look up. So this is the length, same this point, same as here. This is the width, going in that direction, and now we're going to add the height. So what that means is we're going to have 3 vanishing points. And we're going to see where these converge, and it can seem very confusing, I know, but you're going to end up with a building that you are looking up at. You're pretending that that's going that way. So if we ended up oh, sorry. I actually drew that as if the vanishing point was down here going in this direction. So anyways, it's just to say that you are getting a building where you are describing the height, the width, and the length. And you can take this as far as you want and go as detailed as you want, but I challenge all of you to, again, look out your windows. On your next walk, look at what is 1-point perspectives. Look down the sidewalk or at the street, going off into the vanishing point. Maybe stand at the corner of your house and look at your house, or even a room, and see that it's in 2-point perspective, and just start having fun with it, because it's all about how we observe the world around us. So thanks for joining. Hope you're having fun.
Yay! That was so much fun. Hey, check this out. Come here, Olivia. So Olivia was working with Sophia on this drawing class. Look what she did. Woohoo! So good. Okay, guys, so make sure you join us on our Facebook community, which is Artrageous Arts Community. Share all of your perspective with us, whatever it may be. And don't forget to join us tomorrow, you guys. Delphia is doing a vocal class. Tomorrow at 1 p.m. It's going to be amazing. You're going to leave sounding like a songbird. So
I'm so excited.
We'll see you tomorrow, everyone. Thanks for joining. Bye.